Hello Bishes, welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be doing another speed paint styled draw with me because these videos really help out with efficiency and balancing different projects, and I'm pretty much saying the same information I would if I was recording myself, but instead of my face it's just me drawing comics for my Instagram. So this comic is kind of more based off of like a sunset vibe or just what I usually do when I'm with my partner in the car and we're just driving through the sunset. I feel like we all have those moments and we all have a song that's kind of tied to those moments, and mine specifically is Dreams by Fleetwood Mac, but unfortunately because that song is copyrighted I can't put it in this video, but you can just imagine it or just look at this comic and attach your own favorite sunset drive type of song with it. I don't know, think about yourself and your own loved one driving through a sunset. Anyway, as I'm drawing that, the real topic I wanted to discuss in today's video is what I don't like about working in animation. And this is not like trying to throw studios or people under the bus. This is not like a video where I'm going to talk trash about people. So if that's what you came for, I'm sorry, that's not what I'm about. So I don't know, don't watch it if you wanted some juicy juice. But this video is more about just talking about the realistic sides of working in animation and just what I personally don't like or feel like a little stressed by sometimes. And you know, everything in life is not perfect and not everything is going to make you happy at the end of the day, and I'm just going to be providing reasons within why animation is not always the most perfect industry either, so that you can be more informed about whether or not if this is a career you want to go into, or just because you want to know just to know, or yeah. So based on my last video, a lot of you might already know that one of the things I don't really love about animation is how it's a very project-driven field and it's very nomadic, and there will be times in life where you just don't have a job because you're in between jobs and you're pretty much on your own when you have to land on your next gig, unless if you're at a studio that is always going to be recirculating their artists into the next film or show. That happens, but at the same time I wouldn't expect it for every job that you take in animation. So that's just one of the things that I personally don't like, because there's just uncertainty and a lot of anxiety things that can happen in between jobs because you just never really know. And I feel like for me, as a very future-oriented person, I want to know, and when I don't know, that just really gets me nervous. Like every time I'm about to interview for a new job, I always get the butterflies in my stomachs again. Even as someone who has worked a few years in the industry, I still get scared, I still get nervous, I still feel like I'm a newbie all over again because you have to reprove yourself to people, and that can get emotionally exhausting sometimes. At the end of the day, when I envision life, I just think of it like a scale, and anything that you decide to go with, there's going to be a cost or some sort of sacrifice, and sometimes in order to follow your passion, you might have to pay a bit of instability or uncertainty with it, and that's just one of the costs for animation. The next thing that's not really my most favorite thing about working in animation is that it really just affects your perception now of films, TV shows, or animated projects that, you know, are on streaming services. Is you'll just always think about work when you watch an animated show or a movie that's now in the theaters, and it's harder to separate yourself from what you used to find enjoyable just to watch for entertainment purposes, and now you kind of just think about work, or you reflect back on your own level of skills and stuff like that. So it can be a little bit stressful sometimes watching a film that's, you know, really good, and then you're just like, oh, how am I gonna ever, you know, get to this film's level of cinematography in my storyboards or something like that. Or you might be overly critical about this movie and you're just like, wow, this movie's cinematography and acting just sucks, and you only know it sucks because you have experience working in the field, and now you can't enjoy things the way you used to and just be like, oh yeah, that was funny, that was great, that was heartwarming, and that was that. Now you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm analyzing this film and thinking about why things do and don't work, and you know, it sometimes takes away the joy. On the other hand, though, I will say that it has made me more empathetic towards people who work in the film industry. And in fact, I feel like there are times I've been less critical of shows or movies because now I kind of know what level of work goes behind these things. And I kind of have a gist of, you know, how people are paid and just how life kind of is working in the entertainment field. So I have sympathy for people in live action because I'm not in live action. I will never understand what it's like to be in that field unless if I worked in it, but I feel like I can understand to some degree what it might be like, and I know that there are people who have a lot worse working conditions out there in the entertainment field. So now whenever I watch films, I kind of just think about the people who work on it, and I become a little bit less critical because I'm just like, well, you know, even if this movie sucks, it's not the people who worked on its fault all the time. There are just so many layers of things that go into it, like executives saying stuff, producers saying stuff, directors saying stuff. Like, one film that you watch is not always just one person's viewpoints in life. There are so many people contributing to this thing, and it can just get very complex and messy. So at the end of the day, it's really hard to put the blame on anyone. So I might as well just be like, you know what, like, this is just a result of just what happened throughout the work process, and I'm not going to just be like, wow, these artists suck or blah blah blah, because you don't really know what was going on behind the scenes. And again, that's not to say that you shouldn't criticize films, because I feel like people can always be improving, and not only just improving the quality of work, but also improving the quality of people's work-life conditions. Which brings me to my next point, which is that unfortunately, there is still some level of mistreatment, abuse, or unfairly paid artists that are in this industry, and many of you might already know about the sexual harassment cases that have emerged within the recent years in the animation industry. Honestly, I can't say if it got better or worse just because I personally have not experienced it myself, which I am very lucky to even say. So just be aware of that, but I do feel like people are bringing these cases more into the light and talking about it and making sure that people are being more responsible when it comes to this. And yes, unfortunately, some artists are still not getting paid the best or fairly, and this is something where I feel like if you're about to receive an offer for a job, or you're still in the middle of working a job, it's not bad to ask around people what they get paid. I know it seems like taboo traditionally, but it's time to break tradition and know what you're worth, you know? So sometimes you can just ask people who are relatively around the same level as you, or someone who just recently graduated the same year as you, and just know what the ballpark is for someone of your, you know, skill level and your choice of field within animation. Like a storyboard artist and a viz dev artist tend to get paid differently. I don't know what it's like to be a visual development artist, but for story people, you can ask story people. If you're a viz dev person, you can ask a viz dev person, something like that. Another thing you can do is, if you are going to be working for a unionized studio, to check the rates on the union's website, because they will provide a list of the average rates for an artist working in this field or position for X amount of years, because there are things like the journeyman rate that you should be aware of, which means, you know, after you've worked X years, you should be getting paid this much. And just know your worth. If someone is going to lowball you, obviously don't be afraid of the thought that, oh, if I counter them with a higher rate that I want to be paid by, they might reject me. Like, no, just go at least try and give it a shot and see what they say, because most likely the studio does have more money allocated to you, but they just want to save where they can. And when you usually, you know, counter them with a different great. They will at least maybe meet you in the middle somewhere, assuming that the place that you're interviewing for is a good company, you know? So just make sure that you never just accept a lowball offer just because that was the first response given to you. And the next thing that kind of annoys me about working in animation is that typecasting is still kind of a thing that exists. Honestly, it's not even kind of a thing, it's very much a thing that still exists. It's kind of like how actors continue being recirculated on shows or films that are very similar to each other in genre. And if you're an artist that's really good at comedy, you might continue being recirculated on comedy shows. And if you're someone who's really good at action, you might continue being recirculated on action. And if you really love doing that type of stuff though, you might enjoy that. If anything, it might help you get jobs a lot easier. But however, there are a lot of artists out there who can kind of do anything and are able to expand their horizons and have done that ever since they were a student, and thought that, hey, if I could just be good at drawing like anything, like shouldn't I be able to land on a job? Sometimes that actually works backwards, and because you're kind of a generalist, people don't know where to put you then, and it makes it less clear as to what type of an artist you are, so they're just like, well, we don't really know now. But there is this person who's really good at action, so we at least know to hire him or her. So that's kind of when it becomes a little bit tricky. So I wouldn't say that you should just stop like being able to draw everything. I feel like you should always be growing and diversifying the things that you're capable of doing, but also know that when it comes to job hunting in this industry, people want people who are specifically good at certain things, and they still are open to generalists or artists that can do pretty much a range of things. However, I feel like it might make it a little bit harder for people to know where you would be suitable in the project, which is kind of annoying. So yeah, I can say this for sure as an assistant director. I've had moments where I had to place artists on certain sequences or parts of the show just because they were really good at that thing, and when time is pressing, you have to assign the person who's really good at that thing if you want it done on time. And as someone who's been interviewed myself for different jobs, people have asked me too, like, what type of board artist are you? Like, what are you good at doing and stuff? What is your specialty? And I would have to like make up something, but at the end of the day, just don't let that hinder you from your overall growth. But when it comes to building your portfolio and just trying to place yourself in a job position, just choose one thing that is your favorite thing, so that if you do get recirculated on that type of project all the time, it's at least something you like. But I hope that in the future, people are more open to people being very well versed in a range of things. So this kind of relates to my next point as well, that I don't really like about the animation field, but this could also go for live action or entertainment, is that when people ask you what's your favorite film or what's your favorite show or blah blah blah, and it's totally different from anything that you create, but they might judge you for that type of show that you like because they'll assume that that's your go-to for inspiration, when that's not like always the case. I feel like that's such a one-sided way of thinking about things. Like, there's so many more reasons as to why people like things other than just like, oh, it inspires my art, this is what I want to create. Like, for example, I might have watched The Haunting of Hill House, but I don't really want to make anything that's really horror related. I've watched You on Netflix, but I don't really want to make anything that's a thriller either. And it's just something that is fascinating to me, because when I had many interviews at work, just so you know, have a few movies in your back pocket ready to say, because people will ask you, what's your favorite movie? What's your favorite show? But the intention is more like, what type of shows or films do you watch that kind of inspire your art making or your filmmaking? That's the real question. So they're never really asking you, what's your favorite film or movie? Unless if you're at a very casual like meeting, that's fine. But when you're in an interview, it's kind of almost like the deciding factor of whether or not they want to hire you. And in fact, I was actually not chosen for a job once because the types of movies I listed to the studio were not their type of movies. But I was also just like, these movies aren't really like things I would make art-wise either. You just asked me what's my favorite movie and I just enjoyed watching this film. Like, why does everything have to be tied with each other all the time? So now I feel a little bit self-conscious talking about what my favorite movies and shows are, because now I feel like people will just associate me with them. And then my last little critique about the animation industry is that I sometimes feel like things are a little bit too lax or just not certain enough. Like there's still so much uncertainty sometimes that exists. So for example, when it comes to applying for the jobs, you might not hear back from a recruiter for God knows how long, and you'll never know what the fuck happened to your application for a while. That happened to me a lot initially when applying to jobs. So you never really know what's going on. But even when you start working at the studio too, you sometimes still don't even really know what's going on with the project that you're on. And even when you ask people, things are always still unsure. But I feel like this might go for other companies and industries outside of animation as well. But just from my experience so far, I feel like anything that is creative or entertainment related tends to be a little bit more loose, and sometimes too loose to the point that you don't really know what the structure is or what you should be doing sometimes. And things like, you know, even vacation days, it's like you don't know how to really balance that, because every time you're starting a new project, it's like, oh my gosh, you have to start accruing like dates all over again, and people will be like, yeah, you can take off whenever you want, but then when you take off, like they're also a little bit unsure or nervous about it. So I don't know, it just sometimes feels like a gray area that is really hard to decipher, and that's just, I don't know, a part of it. I don't really have a solution for this one because I've just been going with the motion of the ocean, and if anything, I feel like it taught me to be a little bit more flexible and spontaneous and not need to know everything so far in advance. So yeah, I'm a very hardcore planner and I tend to like knowing what's ahead of me, but sometimes you don't know what's ahead of you, and that's okay. But yeah, those are just some of my personal little peeves about working in the industry. I wanted to choose things to talk about that are a little bit more apparent in the animation industry, but at the end of the day, every job out there is not going to be perfect. Any industry you decide to go to is not going to be perfect, so it's about choosing what you're willing to deal with, I guess. But yeah, anyway, thanks for watching this video. If you want to read this full comic, check it out on my Instagram, and don't forget to play your favorite Sunset Drive song while you're flipping through it. So yeah, I'll see you all in the next one, so peace out and stay wholesome, bitches.